France 24. Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. This is the France 24 debate. We're looking at the destruction of shrines, some dating back as far as the 16th century in Timbuktu in Mali, one of Africa's cultural treasures, by the radical Islamists who control that town, have so for the last 3 months, taking advantage of a situation where a demoralized Malian army staged a coup and was otherwise occupied in the capital. With us from Bamako, Fatoumata Sir Diakité. She's Mali's former ambassador to Germany and the chair of the Association for the Progress and Defense of Women. Also with us from London, Jeremy Keenan of the School of Oriental and African Studies. He is with us, as well as here in the studio, Jean-Charles Brizard, a risk consultant, and also with us, Emmanuel Goujon of the Association Africa Global Approach, and who are also with us here in the studio. Now, before the break, we had touched a little bit on the outside players. Northern Mali, a vast region, Timbuktu, 1,000 kilometers from Bamako, but it's not in a vacuum by any stretch of the imagination. There you see a map of the wider region. You heard in part one Emmanuel Goujon describe how the Sahara can be a lawless place all the way from one ocean to the other. And the question that we've been wondering at this point, and was touched on just before the break, and I'll put it to you, Emmanuel Goujon, was, do you see, in the long run, vast swathes of northern Mali becoming this enclave, the kind that Jean-Charles Brizard described?
I think it's a possibility. So far, no political solution has been found by the international community or by the regional community, including Algeria, Niger, ECOWAS, this group of West African states who is trying to solve the crisis as well, but they haven't found any solution yet. It seems also that Algeria is playing a strange game in that story. They don't want really to push too much. They don't want any army intervention. They don't want any Western intervention in Mali to stabilize the situation. Also, we have to bear in mind, I think, that it has been a will for a long time from the Islamist radicals to set up a safe haven somewhere in the world. They have tried, as you remind us, in Afghanistan. They have failed. They have tried after that in Iraq. They have failed. Now they are trying in Somalia, and they have tried also in northern Mali. They are looking for a place where they can be safe, where they can gather, where they can train. And Sahara, for that, is the best place. It's huge. It's difficult to control, even with satellite means or all the electronic means we have nowadays. It's hard to get intelligence. It's very difficult to send, for example, journalists. It's too dangerous to go there now to cover the events properly. So it's really the ideal kind of place. It's very hard to reach. You can cross from one border to the other if you are pursued by some soldiers or policemen. So it has been for a long time also a place of lawlessness, yes, but also a place where a lot of mafias, a lot of criminal networks have been expanding and developing their activities. It was human trafficking, prostitution also, going to Europe. It was counterfeit cigarettes passing through the Sahara. I mean, a lot of things, weapons, of course.
Some say even drugs. Is that true?
Mm-hmm. It seems so, that it was one of the routes coming from Guinea, crossing through Mali, and then going up north to the seaports of Europe. So it's very interesting to see it also from a global perspective. First, a strategy of the Islamists to get a safe haven. Second, the way these Islamists have taken over some criminal groups, some mafia groups, and some rebel groups like the Tuareg, at one point, use them to the point that they will take over power, and then now trying to set up a safe haven to continue their traffic, but also to gain more importance on the geopolitical scene of the situation in Africa.
Fatoumata Sir Diakité, there was this uneasy alliance, if you will, between Tuareg rebels and the Islamists. And since last week and the fighting in the northern town of Gao, it seems as though all bets are off between the Tuareg rebels and the people of Ansar Dine.
Yeah, I mean, the Tuareg rebels have been defeated, and they left Gao, and they even left Timbuktu, which was not part of this fight. So now Gao and Timbuktu are in the hand of Mujao. And Mujao is also a kind of, it is a branch of ACME, but it is composed of people from Algeria. And, as someone has just said, Algeria is playing game with us in this fight for decades now. And the problem is that even if during the rebellion, the past year's rebellion, those rebels of Tuareg, when they were during the fight, when they were injured, they were received by Algeria to be treated. So we don't know what Algeria is the game is playing in that. But the situation is, it's not only Mali alone which can stand for that. It's not even Algeria alone which can stand for that. So I think that the time has come for us, mainly for Algeria, to be part of the fight.
Now,
and to be part of the solution, because it's not part of the solution still. He's playing game, but this game will be against him because Mujao is fighting against Algeria, not against Mali. But the base is in Mali, of course. So we don't want Mali to be a kind of Afghanistan in Africa. It's even worse than Afghanistan, because in Afghanistan we know our opponent. But now today in Mali we don't know who is doing what and who is part of the process. You know that there is Ansardin. You know that you have Mujao. But among all this, you have also Boko people from Nigeria, you have Pakistanis, you have people from different, even African nationalities. You have Senegalese, you have people from Guinea. So in Mali, in the northern part of Mali, it's a kind of melting pot. And it's a place where they think that they can do everything they want. Drug smuggling, trafficking of women, criminal networks, trafficking of cigarettes, and trafficking of money. So it's become a kind of no man's land.
So you mentioned some of the outside players that could maybe do something about it. Well, it just so happens Mali's foreign minister in Algiers this Monday, his Algerian counterpart putting out a statement denouncing the destruction of those monuments that, quote, monuments that, according to Algiers, help spread the values of tolerance and spirituality. There you see the Algerian Mourad Medelsi, who, by the way, in recent days has also hosted the top diplomat from Burkina Faso and an envoy of the West African regional body ECOWAS. So, Jeremy Keenan, is Algiers coming around now, and the fact that we are seeing these meetings taking place?
Well, I think as many of your previous speakers have said, Algeria is playing games. These are extremely dangerous games. They may not be easy to control, and they might well get out of hand. Because on the one hand, the Islamist groups that we're talking about, they are being supplied from Algeria. Their fuel is coming from Algeria. Much of their manpower is coming from Algeria. Their provisions are coming from Algeria. And their leaders, or not all of their leaders, but some of their leaders are also linked and tied to the Algerian secret services.
But why would it be in Algeria's, why would it be in Algeria's interests, Algeria, which went through the so-called blood years where there were scores of people killed, why would it be in their interest to foster Islamic radicals just across the border?
Because for the last 10 years, since 2002-03, Algeria, at least its secret services, that's the DRS, has been actually fomenting instability throughout this region on and off, continuously for the last 10 years. So it is part of that strategy. This is understood by the West, particularly the Americans, who need and have some degree of instability, low-level terrorism throughout this area to justify their own presence, that is AFRICOM, in Africa as a whole. So that is a strategy which has been going on for 10 years. This present strategy by Algeria was also to completely, if you like, destroy any credibility of any sort of Tuareg separatist movement south of its borders. There was a real threat last October, November, December that this movement, MNLA, could really become quite a powerful sort of organization. That was a threat to Algeria by, if you like, letting loose the Islamists in amongst it, particularly through Iyad, who is a Tuareg. It opens up the chaos that we've got now. And whether that gets out of control or not is something we'll have to watch. So from an Algerian objective, it has completely destroyed any credibility of any separatist movements, Tuareg nationalism in the south of its own borders. It has maintained the instability of the region, which at the moment is still, in a sense, under control. And we haven't yet got an Afghanistan situation, although it could well, get much worse. And Algeria is already, as you've just said, talking to most of these groups. And again, the United Nations is not prepared to give the green light for a military intervention. So one can see things moving towards some sort of peace settlement. Hopefully, perhaps, it may take several months or a year or so, and instability will continue. But with Algeria playing the, on the one hand, the very positive role. Here it will receive the accolades from the West for once again destroying Islamist terrorism, but a sort of terrorism that it has been instrumental in actually creating and supporting.
Jean-Charles Brizard, what do you think is the upshot of those meetings that we're seeing, those images we saw of the Malian and Algerian foreign ministers meeting together?
We should be clear on regional, if not international cooperation. This is the key, really. Why? First, because of the inability of the local armed forces to resolve the situation, and second, because of the scale of the threat. Again, the threat goes beyond the Sahel region and probably the African continent. What we need.
I've heard it said, by the way, on that score that that many in Algeria view Mali still as kind of because it's a former French colony as an outpost of French interests, and therefore because there still is that ambivalent feeling between Algerians and the French that fostering chaos south of the border doesn't bother them.
Well,
is that credible?
I'll speak about Algeria. The problem with Algeria in that cooperation issue is that it wants to limit the scope of cooperation to the Sahel region countries. Why? For internal reasons. Because it doesn't want external forces, Western forces, to come on the ground. Because it wants to play a leading role, while, as it was said before, it has an ambivalent position on the terrorist issue, at least on the Islamist issue. While other countries, such as Morocco, which also had a key role in destructuring most of the terrorist groups in North Africa in the past, wants to play it more international because it believes the threat is international. And I believe it's a wise and obvious position. Again, given the
or is Morocco just being contrary because they don't like the Algerians?
Absolutely not. I mean, I think they have in mind the fact that local countries in the Sahel regions are unable by themselves to resolve the situation, and because they have themselves experienced the terrorist threat of these groups in the past.
Now, refugees inside Burkina Faso, refugees from Mali, I say, don't just point the finger at Algeria. Swiss television in the past few days spoke to the deputy mayor of one town, the town of Gossi, there you see it on the map, who thinks his country's feeling the fallout from regime change in Libya.
We have Malians who were born here, who left for Libya and grew up there and did their whole military career in the Libyan army. So when Gaddafi died, the Islamic Legion that protected him was left with no job. They were lost and didn't know what to do. So they came back home with what? With their weapons. Because they weren't merchants or farmers. They were soldiers from the military.
Emmanuel Goujon, we've said it before on this show about there being sort of the backlash of the Arab Spring being felt in sub-Saharan Africa. How much does that resonate, what we just heard that deputy mayor of Gossi say?
I think it's very possible that some of the troops in the rebel movement, the radical, the Islamists, the Salafists, are coming from Libya and have been trained and armed by Colonel Gaddafi during his time in power. It's very possible. And they have the structure, the organization, the efficiency also, the military efficiency, especially compared to the Malian army. But what we have to bear in mind as well, and it's very important to underline it and never forget about it, because this situation might occur in other countries in Africa. This situation is also the result of the collapse of the Malian state. It's a result of some years of corruption, of misconduct, of misuse of the national resources, human resources as well, of course, but also the wealth. And if, for example, President Amadou Toumani had been supportive to his army, instead of sending them without ammunition, without supplies, without support in the desert to fight the rebels like that, he would still be in power, and maybe he would have been still very important in the region to solve that kind of situation. But nowadays, it's a big political crisis, even in Bamako, in the south part of Mali, and we don't know exactly how this situation also will end up. So we really have to think in a way that we have to support the local governments in order to help them with their security forces. We have to give them some money to equip them, to train them properly, to continue to develop this kind of, I would call it, as the French do, the Republican sense, you know, in order to support their state, in order to fight their internal and external enemies. But it's very important that the international community take that dimension into account, that it's because of the collapse first of the Malian state that this situation is now in front of our eyes.
We're almost out of time. Fatoumata Sir Diakate, just briefly before we go, the fact that there is what's going on today, is that a wake-up call to the people in Bamako to perhaps sort out their differences once and for all?
I mean, I would like just to talk about some of the points which you have mentioned before. I mean, concerning, for example, that there was no, the UN didn't give any green line for any intervention in Mali. I think the Security Council, I mean, mainly, I want to say that we understand that because, you know, it is a matter of interest. Because with no resolution of the UN, of the Security Council, those international community, so-called international community, went to war in Libya. And we are what we call the collateral of this war.
So we're out of time here, but this might concentrate the minds, is what you're effectively saying. Fatoumata Sir Diakate, I want to thank you for joining us from Bamako. I want to thank as well Jeremy Keenan for joining us from London, Emmanuel Goujon and Jean-Charles Brizard for being with us here on the set. And thank you for being with us in the France 24 debate. Stay with us. Coming up next, it's time for business. Tom Burgess-Watson will be with you.